I'm a certified health coach and nutritionist, and welcome to Spanglish World and Her Network on Zingo TV, channel 250 and 251. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app and make sure that you review it. It's free in the App Store. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku, and Roku Sticks on all smart TVs from 2016 forward. So I have a special guest today. I'm just going to read you her bio. So Monica here is a codependency recovery coach that helps women overcome codependency so they can achieve healthy and fulfilling relationships. After years of struggling with one toxic relationship after another, people-pleasing, lack of self-worth, and constantly feeling like she was crazy, Monica discovered that she is codependent. Since then, she has been working on healing her codependency, and she was able to let go of these toxic relationships, plus change her entire life around. She has been studying and mastering how to heal from codependency for years. She has learned that there are many people who are in fact codependent, but they don't know it. They think they're crazy when in fact they're just codependent. Since then, Monica has made it her mission in life to help others feel less alone and to help them heal from codependency. She has spoken publicly on stage about her own story of codependency. She has also turned what she always thought was her curse into her purpose. Her mission in life is to help others heal their inner child and break free from their codependency. So welcome to the wellness movement.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's like
Yes.
my honor to be here.
Yeah, happy Monday. So you're just outside of New York. You're in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Is it, we'll do what Canadians always do. Is it sunny there?
It's sunny, but actually it's really, really cold. Like
Oh, is
really
it? Yeah,
cold.
it's cold here today too.
Yeah,
It's
last
very
week was nice.
deceiving.
Last week was like I even was able to go for a walk on the beach. No, today it's like you walk outside, you're like, what in the world happened?
Nice. Haha. All right. I know. So we're going through that as well. Yeah. So where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Brooklyn and
Oh,
born and bred Brooklyn girl all the way.
nice. So a lot of people tend to move away and you stayed.
No, I stayed. I mean, my family is here and we're very close. And like, I went a little bit like more, Brooklyn's very large. So I kind of went to another area away from my family at some point, but then I came closer to be next to my mom and my sister. And yeah,
Oh,
just,
cool.
we're close and I have my community and it's a very big area also. It's not like a small town. It's like, it's a whole city, like pretty large. So,
It's funny because near me, I'm just outside of Toronto in a town called Whitby, and there is a section north that's called Brooklyn.
oh, wow.
It's Brooklyn it's spelled Lin instead of Lyn. So a very
Yeah.
different Brooklyn with a very different vibe.
For sure.
Like,
For sure.
super
Totally different.
suburban.
Also in Florida for a bit in Miami. And that was really nice. But it's hard when you're from New York. It's like you pull. So now we go to visit Miami. We have a house there. We visit Miami, but
So, how long does it take to get into New York City?
From where I am, it's usually by train because you can't really drive in the city. Like it's impossible. So by train, it could take 45 minutes.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
So that's like me to Toronto.
Yeah. You take the subway and the subway happens to be right next to my house. So you take that like straight to the city.
Cool. Okay. So I've been to New York several times, and each time I go, it's always like a 3 or 4 day visit. And I always feel like there's so much to do, so much to see that I never get to Brooklyn. And it's not for lack of knowing people in Brooklyn. It's just that I just don't get there.
Yeah.
So the next time I go, I think what we'll have to do is try and make a week of it and spend some time in New York City and some time out in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I will say that the city's more fascinating as far as like visiting things to do and, Broadway and stores. It's the city that never sleeps, you know what I mean? Like Times Square and everything. Brooklyn is a little different in that way because there's not as many attractions like there is in the city.
Yeah.
A lot of people live here. I mean, there are some really cool things, really cool museums, and definitely in certain parts of Brooklyn there are things, but for like tourists coming in to visit, the city is where you want to be.
Yeah, but there must be like neighborhoods. One of the things that I do like about New York is that once you kind of get outside the hubbub of, say, Times Square, which I'm not really into, um, there's like little neighborhoods that you can wander
Yeah.
around,
So
right?
yeah, we do have that in Brooklyn for sure.
Yeah, and I like that vibe. I like of just like wandering into neighborhoods and discovering like the local coffee shop or, just like.
That we have a lot of for sure because we have a lot of like in Williamsburg, which is like an area where a lot of, I would say, younger crowds are more like not necessarily like hippie, but like or hipsters, I would say, but more like that young vibe that, where there's a lot of cool, interesting things and cool shops and like little coffee shops and different things like that. And then we also have the Prospect Park area, which is really nice because there's a really large like park over there. You can run, there's horseback riding in the summer. Like there is nice things there if you are into that stuff. But most people, when they come to New York, they're like, city, Times Square. I don't like that because it's very noisy for me. And I'm like, it's so overwhelming for my senses. And I'm like,
Yeah. Plus, you've been like around it your whole life.
Yeah, but like, don't tell anybody, just everybody's watching. I've never gone to any of the main attractions that everybody's gone to. I've never been to the Statue of Liberty. I've never gone to the Freedom Tower. I've never gone to the Empire. Terrible New Yorker.
We're live. Everybody knows now.
My secret, my dirty, shameful secret is out.
But that's funny because like even as a tourist, every time I go, like I do have friends in New York, and so like between yoga and film circles and just like entrepreneur circles, like I just know people all over the place. And so every time we go to New York, there's always people to catch up with and connect with. And even then, I don't actually get through my people. And so what ends up happening is I've never gone to a Broadway show.
That's a travesty. Now that's a shameful secret.
I've never been to the Broadway show. I haven't been to the Statue of Liberty. Haven't done the Empire State. I've done none of the touristy things because every time we go, it's like, who do we know in New York? Who do I want to catch up with?
And you're going for people and connection, not necessarily to visit and like explore the town or the city.
I just go to like, I think one of the times, it was definitely the last time we were there. Another friend of mine from Vancouver just happened to be in New York, and we ended up like having this amazing meal at this restaurant near Gramercy Park. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Gramercy, yeah.
Gramercy Park. And so that's the kind of stuff I end up doing. And like I like going to different restaurants and exploring in that way, but I don't necessarily do all the touristy things. So
yeah, well, that makes sense because if you're looking for connections and you're like, if you're a heart-centered person, it's the people. It's not what you do, it's who you're with, right? That really matters. And you're craving that deep connection. I mean, look, you host a talk show like this. Obviously you like to talk one-on-one with people and get to know people, and the field that you're in, I would imagine, involves a lot of that as well. So
yeah,
that makes sense. I will say though, that Broadway shows are like, I mean, once it opens up again, they've been closed for a year and we don't know when they're opening up again, but the Broadway shows are an experience.
Okay. One of these days when
for sure. When everything opens up and you come back, even with your friends, you make a night out of it. You do a Broadway show, you do dinner. It's a whole experience.
The whole thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's so funny because like, people have been talking about like when everything opens back up, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Mm-hmm. And I thought about it and I was like, it's been a long time since I've been in New York. Like, it would be good to go to New York. And I think part of it is also because I'm connected with people there. Like, I do
Yeah.
find myself talking to people there on a regular basis. Actually, just before we got on this call, I heard from a friend of mine in Brooklyn. So I think that's the other pull, is I'm like, oh, I could go and visit and see some people. So, all right, it's on my list.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because before all this, I had a parallel, I taught yoga, and I had a parallel career as a actress and a filmmaker.
Oh, wow. That's so
All
cool.
of my film friends would go to New York, and they would go see the Broadway shows, and they'd come back and talk about what they saw on Broadway. And I would go to New York, and I would just visit with people.
Well, it's an experience, but you could take the visiting and the Broadway and then combine it, and then you got yourself like the perfect one.
There's like, oh yeah, so I've got a picture up in my office where I'm like strutting my stuff, and it's actually a picture that was taken in New York City.
That's great. That's great.
So New York is in my heart.
Yeah, I could see that.
So how long, I think we're gonna kind of work backwards, but like, how long have you been doing what you've been doing, helping, do you work primarily with women?
Primarily with women. I do have the occasional male client. I will say it doesn't happen as often, just because I think women are sometimes more, aware of their codependent traits, and especially where I'm located, specifically in the communities that I work with, there is a lot of tendencies of a lot of women being very codependent, the people pleasing, the seeking validation, even on a society level, especially the way, maybe not the way it is right now, but the way it used to be back then, was very much the woman was very codependent, and was taught to actually have more codependent traits, like, you should care more what people think, and, all the other things that society drills into women so often. So it is primarily women. Yeah. I'm doing this. It's very interesting. It's like a little bit of a story, because I started my own healing journey, and it's been a journey, and it's a never ending journey, my own healing journey after, like I said, being in so many toxic relationships, and recognizing that as much as I can say the other person's toxic or whatever it is, what's with me? Why am I attracting all these type of partners into my life? I'm the common denominator. Something has to be up, and I found out about codependency, and I started looking up the traits, and I read Melody Beattie's book. Melody Beattie is the mother of codependency, and she has a book, Codependent No More, and every single trait, I was like, me, 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 me. And even after I knew that, I still had a lot of resistance, and, to actually face the codependent part. But I started my healing journey and working on myself in other areas. And then I actually have to start dealing with the codependent traits that were coming up in my relationships specifically. They came out the most in my romantic relationships. For me, that's how they appeared. Mm-hmm. And I had to start really facing and admitting the truth that as much as I was falling into these toxic relationships, I was very much to blame as well, because I allowed certain behaviors, and because I had my own wounding that I was so scared to look at. I didn't want to sit with myself. It was so much easier to sit with somebody else and focus on somebody else and be there for somebody else. And I started healing, and then I ended up going into coaching, but I still wasn't focused as being a codependency recovery coach. Mm-hmm. And then somebody asked me to speak about my story on codependency on stage and at an event. And I did. And after that, it kind of took off from there, where people were like, can you coach me around codependency? Oh my God, I resonated with your story so much. Oh my God, I had the same kind of relationships. Oh my God, that was me. And I decided to make that my niche, and I'm doing this for codependency is about only really a year and a half, but coaching, I've been coaching for like 3 years.
So it's funny, because we've been doing it about the same time. I just passed my 3-year mark as like a health coach and a nutritionist.
Wow, that's great.
They're in a different space.
Yeah, it's but you know what? They're all connected. Everything is connected, because if your emotional self is wounded, it's very hard to focus on the nutrition part. And then if your nutrition is not okay, it affects you emotionally. Everything, I'm learning this more and more through my own journey, even how everything gets stuck in the body and everything is connected. And I struggled with my weight my whole life. And it wasn't about my weight. It was really about my image and the way I felt about myself and the way I looked, and the way I looked at myself and
Yeah.
just different things that I've noticed. Yeah.
So like, what was the relationship, or what was kind of the trigger that got you to really look at it? Because like so many people, and I find this even in the space that I'm in, is many people are making a lot of unconscious choices. And it's really easy to kind of numb yourself through certain habits and routines where you don't take responsibility. It's like someone might not be happy with their life, but it's so much easier to not take responsibility and keep doing the things that are getting the results that aren't working. And most people waste their entire lives this way. They are
Absolutely.
not willing to look at the stuff. They're not willing to take responsibility and do the actual work that's required of them. And so what was the sort of the tipping point? Because at some point, all of us, like if we really want to evolve and want more for ourselves, we kind of say, okay, that's it. I'm done with my bullshit. I've had enough. I'm ready.
It was. So I will tell you. So I was I found myself in a relationship with a man who could not and would not give me the relationship that I really wanted. It was a lot of back and forth, and I got stuck there for almost 4 years on and off. Like it was very toxic. So it was very cyclical, and it was a lot of drama and back and forth. And he would start playing these games to push my buttons, and I would react because I was exactly what you said. I was living very unconsciously. I was at a job I didn't like. I was a single mom, and I have, my son. I was not the mother that my son deserved because I didn't have the tools to have patience and be calm, because I wasn't patient with myself. I wasn't calm with myself. And then I was stuck in this, I wasn't stuck. I chose to be in that relationship. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pattern because it wasn't the only relationship that I found myself in that was similar to this, right? But this one was the relationship. This is what I call the catalyst for everything. Like all the other relationships were small potatoes. This one, this was a man who had classic symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder to the point that he actually admitted it at some point, like way later. He would play games and he would do it on purpose to push my buttons, to get reactions. But as much as I can say he's at fault, I'm at fault because I showed up to that relationship and I kept staying and I kept the game going, and I would freak out on him. And like, I wasn't a passive codependent. A lot of people think that codependents are very passive. I wasn't. I have a big mouth and I'm from Brooklyn and I'm not afraid to use it. I would be mean. I didn't even care. I would send him message after message. I'm like watching myself do this, and I'm a very sane and rational, logical person under normal circumstances. But when it came to this person and this relationship, I was just like, I would find myself sending him a message and then I wasn't getting an answer, and I saw that he read it, and I would find myself messaging him again and then messaging him again and then messaging him again. And every time he tried to like end it with me, I would freak out. I would completely find myself curled up in a ball on the floor, crying, just wanting to die. Just like I had enough, like that relationship put me through such a ringer that even when I found out, that's where I found out I was about codependency, that even when I found out I was codependent, I also realized he was a narcissist. And I didn't focus on my codependency. I focused on his narcissism. So I thought to myself, like me, logical, smart person that I am, I'm like, okay, so now that I know that he's narcissistic, I can outwin him in his game. I literally had that mentality because I needed to get what I wanted. And what I wanted at the time, or I thought I needed at the time, was his validation and his security. I kind of became addicted to him. It was like, I look back at it now, like I don't even recognize that person, and I found myself just stuck and so focused on him. And it's exactly what you said, where I got to a point where I was like, something's not right here. Something isn't okay. Like I had enough of my garbage. I had enough of this, and I hit a breaking point. And I really knew that if I didn't go get some kind of help in some way, as far as taking responsibility and working on my issues, then, you know, it wouldn't have worked. And what's interesting for me personally, it was a very spiritual experience, is because I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. I was very secure with my job. I was killing it at work. Nobody would believe you, by the way, or believe me, I should say, if I had told them that I was like that in relationships, because I was very strong. I was strong, confident. I was great at my job, but I was miserable. So I knew I needed to go get help. So for me, it was a spiritual experience where, like, I kind of had to surrender, because I hit my breaking points, and it's not giving up. It's more of like, I cannot control whatever my whole life. As much as I was trying to control everything, my life was more out of control than ever. And I had to surrender to the universe, to God, to just be like, I don't know, show me where to go. And slowly, it still wasn't conscious. It was very unconscious at that time, because I was very much from a place of pain. I was really hurting, but I started to actually go for therapy, and I started looking into different self-help, personal development, anything that someone told me to do, I would do. I was very open. I decided to stop deciding that I know better than everybody, and like listen to what people had to say. Like if I saw somebody who was happy in their life, I wouldn't have a problem asking them, like, how come you don't let things bother you? And I would hear what they had to say. And I would start applying it slowly, slowly, slowly. Like I started taking responsibility. And then I also ended up joining CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous, which is a 12-step program with kind of like AA, but they specifically deal with codependence. And that is when I would say the first time I took real inventory and real accountability of like, what part did I play? Where was I the toxic person? You know?
So you had mentioned earlier that there are signs, or kind of like you read a book and basically everything that she listed off was what you were going through. So what are some of those things, just so that for people who are watching and listening, that they can kind of look at their own relationships and see if this applies to.
So codependency, it's very interesting, because I've seen two types of codependent people. There is the more passive person who's constantly people pleasing, on even outwards, like it's very obvious. People pleasing, seeking validation from other people, the inability to say no, the need to control other people, but not directly, even subtly, like it's through guilt or manipulation. There's a very like the martyr type of personality. And then there's the other type of codependent, which is, I got everything under control and I don't need anybody. I don't need anything. That's a big red flag. Like whenever I hear someone like, I don't need anybody, I don't need anything, because that's not the way we are created. We need people. But when you are so into needing to control everything, it can lead to that thing of, I'm everybody's higher power. I'm the one who has everything under control, you know? So really the traits can show up in both ways, meaning even in the person who is strong and confident, there is still the people pleasing thing. It just comes out very differently. It comes out like, I need to do everything for everybody so that they love me, so that they need me. It's when you're so empty and you feel lonely to the point that I need other people to fill me up. I'm constantly seeking other people's approval, constantly finding myself obsessing about other people and trying to control everything around me. That is like, I would say the key. I mean, there's a lot of traits, but that's like the red flags that stick out the most. And in romantic relationships, you can find it a lot, where you find yourself in a lot of toxic relationships, a lot of dramatic type of situations over and over and over again, very cyclical things, explosive as far as like just the fighting back and forth, the need to control again. The main definition, the way that Melody Beattie says it, is when we have the need to control other people. The reason I don't go with that is because most people don't realize that they're doing it. It's very, very, very unconscious, subconscious of, like I said, you can use passive aggressive behavior, manipulation, but ultimately you're really trying to get what you want and what you need, because you might have the inability to say, hey, I need this. You can't express your needs. Not expressing your needs is a very big codependent trait because you feel like you're not allowed to have needs. Everybody else can have needs, but you can't, you know? So it comes across both ways. I've seen very passive and I've seen the very strong on the outside, like people who can kill it at work, who can be the most, like, I'm the one that everybody comes to for help. You know what I mean? But really, like, if you're not able to ask for help, if you're not able to speak up for your needs, how come?
Right, right. I would almost wonder if like most people have this going on in a lot of their relationships, especially now, like with, I would say, with the pressure of social media to be a certain way, to look a certain way, to present yourself a certain way, and how that influences relationships. And
Right.
so when you're talking about relationships, you're not just talking about romantic relationships either. Like friendships can also have.
Friendships, totally. It's completely. I'm very like always specific. I'm like, relationships are relationships, meaning friendships in families. A lot of times, especially if there's codependent traits that are, it's very generational also, meaning there's generational trauma that's being passed down from generation to generation. If somebody grew up with one parent who's codependent, then there's a 50% chance that they themselves are codependent.
Mhm.
And I wanted to just say something because you said before that a lot of people probably have that and they don't even realize it. So we all have certain codependent traits to a degree because we are all living in society and we're all exposed to certain things. It's when the codependent traits are taking over your life
Right.
that is problematic. When you find yourself up till 3 o'clock in the morning, obsessing over what someone else said or what someone else did, or, oh my God, when I sent that text, do you think they meant it like, they think they read it like that? Or like, I would find myself obsessing over a text, let's say I got from that guy when I was in that relationship. And I'd be like, but you see, like he put the period over here. Do you think that like means something? So when you find yourself ruminating in that, or like, why doesn't he like me? And like, not to like, everybody has a healthy degree of like, I want people to like me, right? Because it's a normal, natural thing. But when it's overtaking your life to the point where, for me, let's say, I was struggling to work, I was crying all day, I was miserable,
Mhm.
then you might want to, look
Yeah.
into a little bit more. Yeah.
Right, right. It's interesting we're having this conversation because I chatted with a friend last week. Let's just say we had a mutual person in our life that we had to say goodbye to because of her behavior. But what this friend shared with me was there was a point in time, and part of what triggered the end of this friendship was that if she was doing something, if she was hanging out with other friends, this person would get upset, be like, why didn't you invite
Oh,
me? She felt left out. Or like if if this person sent her a text and my friend didn't respond right away, she would get like reamed out for it. And so eventually like things just kind of took a turn for the worse, and that was the end of that friendship. So what would you say, like in terms of friendships, right? Because like it's like, I mean, to me what comes to mind is just the importance of having healthy boundaries. But what if you're dealing with somebody, like what if you're someone who's pretty well adjusted and you know what your stuff is and you're cleaning up your side of the street, but you're
mhm.
dealing with somebody who hasn't done that work, and it's not a romantic relationship, and the chances are that they're likely not going to do that work. Like, what
So
would you
there is
say?
that. There is a big thing about, so you mentioned like the buzzword of boundaries is another thing. When we have the inability to say no, lack of boundaries, that's red flags. That comes out in almost every relationship that we have. So the question you're asking is, what do I do when I'm in the work and I'm trying to heal and I'm in a friendship that the other person is not, to the point that it's bringing me down? So
Yeah.
I actually speak about this often because it's a very big thing that happens whenever we start our healing journey, excuse me, as far as our wounding. We do tend to lose a lot of relationships, and not because of a lack of love or a lack of I care about this person, but because something's not resonating, it's not a match, and the other person's not respecting my boundaries. So the healing part is, number one, I have to be clear with what my boundaries are, right? And then I have to repeat my boundary as many times as necessary, because in the beginning, when we start to set boundaries, first of all, it is extremely fearful on our trauma, on our nervous system. It's very traumatic. We feel like we're in trauma mode. So setting that boundary alone can bring up so much anxiety. And when we do that, the people that we're in relationship with or friendship with, whatever it is, they're not going to be like, hey, let's respect this boundary. They're not used to it. This is new to them, especially if they have, I would say, unhealthy behaviors. Then it's like, they're going to try to push back. So what I always tell my clients is, when we set a boundary, we keep it simple, we keep it clear, we do not explain ourselves, we do not apologize. There is no apologizing, because most codependent people, their entire life is, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. They're over explaining themselves. And I'm like, no, we keep it simple, we keep it short, and we repeat the boundary over and over again. Now, if the person is in a friendship with us and they are not respecting our boundary, then there is a need for distance. So I had to let go of a very, very dear friendship of mine, like what you're explaining, sound very similar, when I started, because I was new to setting boundaries, right? Like, I was new to trying to take care of myself. And this friendship became so enmeshed and so codependent, where, again, she would get upset also. It's like, I went out with somebody and I didn't tell her, or if I didn't call her back right away all the time, or if whatever she thought I needed to do and I didn't do, she would completely try to like bring me down in that way. And I couldn't do it. So I had to create massive distance. And till this day, I will tell you, I have a lot of love for this person, like a tremendous amount of love. She was a really good person and a good friend. But when I was in the beginning of my healing journey, I couldn't afford to be around her and be in that dynamic. And I think we need to start making it okay to say, I've learned everything I can from this relationship and I have a lot of love for you, but it doesn't mean I can be in relationship with you.
Right. Yeah. So can we just, your audio is doing something weird. So can we just check that? Is that possible?
Sure. I don't.
How's that?
Better?
Yeah, better. Okay, awesome.
Did you hear what I said?
I did hear what you said, but what you're saying is so good that I just want to make sure that we don't lose any of it. So
I don't know how. I just pressed it again. I don't know. So, technology.
It's perfect now. It's so interesting because, like, back in 2018, when I first launched my business, so for a long time, and talk about people pleasing. I'm learning so much. So for a long time, I taught yoga alongside my acting stuff. And I was always in people pleasing mode for these different studios that I worked with and worked for. And then I just realized that no matter how much I put myself out and tried to go above and beyond the call of duty, I just was never going to be getting the recognition that I hoped for. And that was, I mean, it's been a journey. Like, I've been on my own healing journey these past several years as well. I was married, and in 2012, my husband passed away very suddenly. And so it's okay. So it just really created a big sort of shift in my life, where I was looking at everything that I was doing and all of my relationships. And it's funny because, like, at that time, I lost a lot of relationships. But it's the thing about putting your life together from something like that is it doesn't happen overnight. And it is a journey. Like, I am still, in some parts, I'm still processing, right? But I had gone back to school. I had done these certifications and I was launching my business. And 3 people that I was friends with that had been my rocks during the worst of my grieving part, they, like, I am not even kidding you, within a week, all 3 of them were out of my life. Like, boom, there was this incident that happened, and it was like such a minor thing, but it just really crystallized for me that those relationships were over. It's like, here I was creating the next version of me. And instead of being my cheerleaders, they were questioning me. They were not supportive, and they were creating unnecessary drama. And so I just like, and I cried. I was like one of the people, like I had been friends with her for like 18 years. She'd been to my wedding.
Wow.
Like,
That's so
she'd,
hard.
she'd come and visited me and stayed with my husband and I multiple times over the years. And I just had to cut her loose. I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I'm done. But like I cried for days because I was like, and the other two were a couple that I had been friends with for years and years and years as well. Like I think probably like 12 years.
Wow. That's
But
really, really tough. And it's a part of boundaries that people don't really talk about, that where we set a boundary, meaning we stand up for ourselves, we show up for ourselves, and other people don't like it, and we have to set the boundary with them. There's a lot of grief that goes along with that. Number one, there's that fear of like, I don't really want to set a boundary because I want everybody to love me. But then there's also the grief of like, I had these friendships with these people. They were like almost my family.
yeah,
I don't understand like what happened here. And when you start to level up in life, when you start to change and evolve, there are people who are not going to like it because it forces them to look at their own stuff. And not everybody's ready for that. And it's very, very, very painful. And it's so important that we sit with that grief, because a lot of the work that we do with codependency recovery is to talk to the inner child, to focus on the inner child and what's the grief that you're feeling. Of course, it's the loss of the friendship, but there's also that inner child who's like, I don't understand. Like, how could you do this to me? It's really painful because the codependency comes from the childhood wound. It comes from an original childhood wound. And we have to really show up and be there for that inner child and be there for that and be the parent that inner child never had, and really allow ourselves to grieve. Just because we know that somebody is not good for us, it doesn't mean that it feels good to take them out of our life or to cut them out or to create that distance. It's painful.
yeah.
And that's a part of boundaries that I don't hear being talked about enough. I would like set boundaries and stand up for yourself, and it's great and it's beautiful and it's empowering. But there's also a lot of grief that comes with that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, like I've been on this journey for a long time. I think like I've shouldn't say lost. I guess I've released certain people from my life
I
on
like that.
and I think like in this particular instance, I was like so shocked at how quickly it happened. And I mean, it's funny because like that kind of thing in a way is almost sort of going on anyway. Like if someone is doing, like I feel if I'm working on myself, chances are like my circle is changing.
It's supposed to.
Unless my circle is doing the same kind of work that I'm doing, and they're doing that introspection work, and they're like looking at themselves and leveling up themselves. But generally I find that as I continue to level up, that circle changes.
It
But
does, and it's supposed to, because we have our people, and our people, meaning on the soul level, if we're talking on the spiritual aspect, and we have our people on the soul level. And in order for you to find your real people, you do have to constantly level up. You
yeah,
do, because they're also going to, because I believe it's about being a vibrational match, and
yeah,
it's a very spiritual and soul experience. This is not just about the human and the mind. It's a very soul level
I get
thing.
it. I think like, and one of the things that I was saying this to my friend last week when we had this conversation about this person. And I actually called her because I knew what had happened with this person. And I just hadn't really talked to her about it. And then I had sort of stepped back from this toxic person because I could see what was happening. And so I distanced myself from the relationship before it actually dissolved. And then when it finally dissolved, I actually called up my friend to have this conversation. And I said, one of the things I think I'm realizing is it's important for me to be not to be a snob about it, but just I need to be, if I'm considering bringing people into my inner circle, I mean, I'm talking about, somebody who was welcome in my home and dined with us multiple times and stuff. So to me, when someone is in my home, that's very personal. It's not an invitation I extend to everybody. I'm super picky. But I just said to my friend, I said, maybe my red flag I should consider going forward is people who don't have a spiritual practice. Like
I like that. I agree with you. And it's not even about like being a snob or being in our ego. I hear this a lot from people like, oh, it's so egotistical, it's whatever. It's not what it is. It's you have to be on the same frequency. You have to be on the same wavelength, meaning not every friendship and every relationship, you both have to be the same. You could have different, values and opinions, but the foundation of your values have to match up. Meaning if spiritual practices are important to you to the point that it's like a big part of your life, you're not even going to resonate with somebody who doesn't have that.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and then they will fall away. And I very much believe in that we really we operate on different frequencies, and you will find the people and things in your life that are on the same frequency.
1,000%. You're talking to somebody who started in yoga. As I was saying to somebody yesterday, I'm like, I'm straight up into the woo. And he's like, what's woo? I'm like, woo woo.
Woo woo. I love the woo woo.
He's like, I don't know what that means. I'm like, well, I'll send you.
Well, maybe we're not on the same frequency.
No, this isn't someone who I almost like it's funny because I used to say this to a friend of mine, but it's almost like it would be cool to have like a questionnaire, a friend or a relationship questionnaire. It's like, do you meditate? Do you do this?
Yeah, right. Well, you know what? So I actually believe that when we become extremely consistent with our practices and we really are doing the work and whatever that means for you, whether it's therapy, coaching, yoga, whatever, we become very consistent and we heal ourselves and we open that up. Automatically, what will happen is the people that you will attract in your life are going to have something in common, because you're not going to even attract these people into your life if not. Like, law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
So we attract what we are, Now you might have people from your life that are from a different time in your life, but those people will end up falling away, or you will have to distance yourself. So we kind of do have this questionnaire. It's just very, very internal and very in our subconscious. And it's what people would call energy. Like you can feel someone's energy. I can feel like from you, I can already feel your energy through here. It's very clear to me that you have a very open heart space and that you're a very warm and loving person. And that's the energy that you give off, which means that the people you attract in your life have to somewhat match that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's all a good learning experience,
Yeah.
and I am somebody who's like, I have a daily meditation practice, and of course I have other things that I bring into my daily routine and daily rituals. And I mean, my latest thing is just journaling, because I was doing it and then I stopped and now I'm back at it. But
Yeah.
I'm always kind of in this mode of working on myself, right? And so I like people I tend to resonate best with people who are in that space of whatever they're doing, but they're doing something.
100%. It's funny you mentioned journaling, because I've always had this interesting relationship with journaling. I have my daily practices, my morning routine. But journaling has always been like on and off for me, on and off. And lately I've been very, very focused on journaling. Like I can find myself journaling for half hour, an hour at a time. Just like it's the most interesting thing. It's become like a meditative experience for me in a way. And I'm not the only person, or you're not the only person. I've been hearing this a little bit lately, and it feels almost like it's a collective, energy of what's happening in the world as we raise our consciousness. I mean, the world is raising their consciousness. A lot of people who are still very unconscious, but the consciousness of the world as a whole is is being raised. And I think that journaling is because it really hits a lot of different targets. It's very meditative, meaning like if you're not thinking and you're just writing,
Yeah.
it also is a purge. It helps us purge and release different things. It also gives us the clarity piece, the awareness piece, because you're seeing it in black and white. It covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, yeah. No, and the journaling I do in the morning is it's different from the journaling I do in the evening. Yes, I have two different journaling practices.
I think it's great.
Do it every single day, and yeah. So
I get it. I have my gratitude journaling, and then I have my journaling. My journaling is messy, and it's not, it's not meant for like even clarity so much. It's meant more for that release part. And then I journal in the morning. I have a completely different journaling experience than I do at night, because all the emotions that come up, they get stuck in your body and they need to like be released. And journaling, like I said, is very, very effective for that. I think having a practice of that, or practice of anything, is so important. I always tell people, like, it's not about sitting and journaling for 20 minutes or a half hour. At this point, that's where I am, but not every day. You know what I mean? You do need to journal. Start with 5 minutes a day. Start with 5 minutes. I say this for meditation. I say this for gratitude, everything. Just 5 minutes. And then it grows. What happens is that most people, they wake up one day and they're like, I'm going to journal. I'm going to do all these things. It's too overwhelming. I don't believe in that like big change. I believe in very, very small, very much small changes.
I don't think the big change exists because, and I tell everybody, I'm like, my practice now in terms of how I live my day-to-day life and the routines and the rituals that are part of that practice, from movement to meditation and mindset to my nutrition, like this is something that's evolved over the past 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And even before that, like I would say my spiritual practice really started when I started doing yoga, and that was like in 2000. And then since then, I've like picked up things, I've learned things. Sometimes I'll try something for a period of time and feel like, oh, it doesn't really resonate with me, so I let it go. And then sometimes, like, it's funny because like I started journaling like morning pages from The Artist's Way shortly after I started doing yoga, and that was like sort of my thing for a while. And then the journaling dropped off, but then I picked up meditation, and I picked up tapping, and I've picked up like all of these different things. And I find like I'm sure most people, if I told them what my morning routine is, they would be like, well, no way. But it's like, I created this morning routine after years of trial and error. And you know what? I also love myself enough that I'm willing to get up earlier so that I create that space in my day, because my days are full. So it's like, how am I going to have time to do these things? Well, I just get up earlier.
Yeah. So I believe in that very much. And I had the same experience where I've tried so many different things, and I tell my clients the same thing. Not everything works for everybody, and that's fine. It's not about doing it right. There is no right. We all have our own ways that work. For me, like affirmations is a very, very, very big part of my routine, to the point where at one point I was doing affirmations for 45 minutes every single morning, and people would think that that's crazy. And I would never ask my clients to do that, but I know that's what I needed at that time to really help me move forward. Actually, affirmations was something I started even before I started coaching or anything. It was one of, because as much as I'm coaching for like 4 years, I've been in my own healing journey for like 13 years now. And like affirmations, I always say it saved my life, but it doesn't mean that it's the answer for everybody. It doesn't mean it's everybody's go-to. So I always tell people that in order to work with me, the one requirement is you have to be open, meaning you have to be willing to try anything. And if it doesn't work, great, we'll try something else.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah, for sure. It's funny, like, well, I kind of mix tapping and affirmations.
A lot of people do. It's very, very effective.
Together.
And sometimes tapping works for me, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's totally cool. Like, it's different, depends where you are in your life.
I know, but you know what? Like tapping actually really helped me bust through some pretty cool blocks.
That's
That's why
awesome.
like sometimes with tapping, like I might take a little break, but then if I start to feel a little something like I'm a little plugged up or blocked, I'll be like, yeah, I just need to kind of tap it out. I just
Yeah,
gotta.
and it's really, it is very helpful. I also noticed that with removing blocks, especially when you don't really know what it is, and like you tap on it, and then like something will be released. And the affirmations with tapping is great because what it does is it ingrains it in your body.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's great. I mean, like these are wonderful tools to have, and I would say like for anybody who's not familiar with these practices or what we're talking about sounds like super woo, investigate the woo, because if things are not working in your life, if you're not happy, if your energy's off, if you're feeling terrible, if your relationships aren't working, and you just like those are all very big red flags, and you can just choose to do things differently and try something for like 30 days, whatever it is that.
Very good. I'm like, try it. What do you have to lose? Whatever you've been doing is not working for you. It
Yeah,
didn't work well. You're not happy in your life. You're at a job you hate, whatever it is. Like, just try it. Like I told you, you asked me, how did I get into it? I told you, I tried everything that was given to me. I didn't care how wooey it is. And I'm a very scientific, practical person, but I tried it. And now I'm like the most practical person who's playing with crystals and meditations and wooey stuff from here to tomorrow because
well,
it was
I will say that for some of the wooey stuff, like in terms of meditation, there's so many studies out there, and
yeah,
for tapping, there's proof, and so it's things that most of us didn't grow up with, but these are wonderful.
all it is. That's really all it is. It's just not familiar to you.
Yeah,
But maybe what's familiar to you isn't working.
yeah,
So for me, it's like it enhanced my life. I'm living a dream life in a way. I found a way to take my passion and generate income from it. And I get to help other people and help people raise their consciousness.
yeah,
I'm not even the same person I was even 2 years ago.
yeah.
So yeah.
I hear you on that. So how can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram, which is really my main, I would say, social media outlet where I post the most content. I do lives, I have IGTV information. I share a lot of stuff on Instagram, which is at empowering_coaching, which I think you have that link. That's the best way to really reach me. Over there, I have a website where you can book appointments for, I do a free clarity call for 30 minutes to see if you are in fact codependent, if you want help, and if I can't help you, I usually direct you to somebody who can. Meaning if somebody needs something a little bit more, I'll give them somewhere else. Or if I don't feel like it's the right fit, I'll usually give you somebody who is. I'm very much about helping people and adding value if I can. And I don't believe that everybody needs to work together.
Yeah.
So if I'm able to help you, I am. So on my Instagram, there's a link and you can schedule a call there, and it's totally free, the first call. So
All right, awesome. So I forgot my outro, but that's okay.
it's okay.
It's
Just be in
my
the flow.
Coco. You
Mhm.
go. Well, you know what? This has been such an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us, to share your wisdom and your gifts. Definitely for anybody who's watching this or listening to this, our relationships and who we are and how we move in this world it's so important. And if things are not working for you in that space, I encourage you to look up Monica, have a conversation with her. And then on the health side, if you are looking to get healthier this spring, give me a shout, because I'm going to be starting my 30-day ultimate lifestyle transformation soon. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys again
Thank
soon.
you so much. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been very valuable.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.